want to talk about turning disruption off and turning innovation on, because we've seen disruption in so many industries. You know, we've seen it in music, we've seen it in chauffeur-driven cars, we've seen it in payments, and leaders are worried. Leaders are worried about, can we keep up with the pace of change? And I don't know about you, but I get up in the morning and I feel like that guy in the rocket sled. You know, that guy whose face is just being peeled back by the forces of change? I mean, it's tough out there. And so I want to talk about who and what is likely to disrupt you, right? And more importantly, what can you do about it? What can we do about this disruption that's coming at us? And I want to do it in a framework of forces of disruption. So I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of technological forces of disruption that are coming at us right now. And I want to start with the basis of all this, which is connectivity, because connectivity underlies so much of disruption. The internet started for one thing, used for another, started to be the communications network during nuclear war, actually turned out to release information. Information found its freedom. Information is out there being beamed to us all the time, and we are empowered by that information. And we kind of forget that when the internet started, information only flowed one way. It was a tiny bit up and a little more back. And that's why the first page of Yahoo looked like this, and the first page of Travelocity looked like that. And there was another reason. Remember that? Yeah, it was just slow. But even so, that limited connectivity equaled great opportunity. The opportunity for disruption. Disrupted music and mapping and news and multifamily and travel. All disrupted by that little bit of communication. And then we had a big change because users began to create information themselves. And that created a two-way street as we were sending information upline. Right? People started writing and selling and rating. My friend Rich Barton, who started Expedia and Zillow, says, if it can be rated, it will be rated, right? So buyers still share experiences, but no longer one-to-one over the backyard fence. Now it's one-to-many over the network on sites like TripAdvisor, where they have 140 million hotel reviews. Nobody goes anywhere without reading a review today. So that's changed the game, as has mobility, another source of data creation. 7 billion cell phones in the world, 5 billion of them internet connected. So we have 5 billion internet nodes that are constantly creating those trillions of tweets, 1 trillion images a year, posts, all these data being created in commerce. 50% of Priceline's bookings are mobile. If you're not in mobile, you're not in the game. It's another source of this two-way data. And then as technologies converge, another source of data, right? Big data linked with cloud, linked with communications, gives you the basis for the Internet of Things. 38 billion things to be connected to the internet by 2020. Things like the industrial Internet of Things, where sensors are running factories, right? Things like pill bottles that are connected to the internet that remind you to take your pills. I'm part of the Internet of Things because I have a paper clip-sized implant in my chest that monitors my heart and reports the performance of my heart every day to the doctor in case it's out of sync. They'll know. So I think it's kind of cool. I'm part of the Internet of Things, right? And what that's done is taken that little stream of data that was connected back when Billy Gates was on a teletype and turned it into a raging torrent of data created by the Internet of Things, by wearables, by mobile devices, by all the devices that are creating data. And that, of course, has created this new term, big data. Big data, we're trying to deal with big data, and the fact that big data exists, we had to have a place to put it, these 2.5 quintillion bytes every day. That created the cloud, right? We had to have a place to put big data. What is the cloud? It just means instead of our own data center, we're using Amazon or Microsoft Cloud. We're using a shared data center. Well, why is that important? because it's instantly available, infinitely scalable, and insanely inexpensive. And it's easy. It's just drop dead easy to use the cloud. And that's why 2 guys and a dog in a startup have as much computing power as a Fortune 50 company. That's a huge disruptor. Now, we've also been looking at big data and said, how do we deal with this big data? How do we make sense out of it? And that's disruption by algorithm. Of course, revenue management based on algorithms. There are all kinds of new algorithms. Facebook News, algorithmic, right? Algorithms decide what's the important news. Half of the New York Stock Exchange, algorithmic trades. You're going to hear more about that, I understand, later in the conference. Blockchain, the basis of Bitcoin, but really a much more important algorithm that's changing the way we do contracts, will change the way we do leases. So algorithms are fueling disruption. If you put big data and mobility and cloud and connectivity together, you get the basis for robotics and the basis of drones. We saw some drones earlier. Robots are everywhere because they don't have to be smart on their own. They can use the cloud. So we have robot first responders. We have this robot that lets Johnny go to school when he's sick, right? He can just roll into class. We have the robots that are assembling Tesla. We have Connie, a robot, my new startup built for Hilton, that's a concierge. So robots are going to be a large disruptor. Well, let's go back to big data for a minute, because along with connectivity, it's driving disruption a lot. 90% of the world's data created in the last 3 years, 80% of that data is unstructured. It's blogs, it's audio, it's video, it's posts. It isn't readily utilized by standard computing. It doesn't fit in rows and columns. It's tough to deal with. So that complexity is another opportunity. The opportunity to simplify this complex data, to create systems of insight, systems where we can tease data out of these masses of data that we are collecting, right? Systems like IBM Watson that can say, 95% chance this is the right treatment for this patient. Systems that for the first time give advice. And that's important. And it takes AI. If data is the new oil, then AI is the new refinery. AI allows us to refine these data. And it's not coming in the future. It's here now in your self-driving car, in your Roomba vacuum, in your Amazon Echo, in Siri. I mean, it's not always perfect. Some of you may have heard that Jeff Bezos the other day said to Echo, Alexa, order Whole Foods. And she said, buying Whole Foods. Oh, shit. Right? See, it's not always perfect, right? But these are systems that make sense of the data in which we are drowning. And I think AI is going to become the new UI. AI is going to change the user interface, just like Alexa has, right? Because it allows us to get richer input. So that means a chatbot. That means natural language search. That means gestures. That means wearables. And why is that important? Because it gives us insight into customer intent. We don't get intent in the standard little forms on the web today, but with these new products, we can get at what does the customer really want? And that leads to perfect selection. If we know the right intent, we can get to the right product. Search doesn't do that because search only gives us clues, right? If I say, what's the best hotel in Hawaii? Google says, there are 42 million answers. Would you like me to read them to you one by one? Search gives you clues, but we can get you to perfect selection by using AI and machine learning and neural networks and new algorithms. We can get to the perfect selection at the right moment. And, well, here's an example. So, and it could apply to multifamily. We've been talking about that this morning. This is from a large home rental company based in Austin, Texas. and they asked us to look at the user interface. Well, it's pretty simple. Austin, arrive, depart, how many people? You can't ask very much. And we said, well, if you just added a little natural language, somebody could say 2-bedroom home near downtown with a great yard. And they said, yeah, but our search wouldn't even find that. We said, well, give it to us. So we read in every single review, and they have 15 million of them, and every single image, and they have 20 million of them. And we used AI, so not only can we find a 2-bedroom home near downtown with a great yard, but when the customer shows up, we're not going to show the inside. We're going to show a picture of the great yard, and we're going to add a review that says great backyard. So we can redecorate that home on the fly, providing perfect output and therefore greater conversion. It's a lot of change. And if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. So get ready for more change, because it isn't just about change in technology, it's new business models. So let me show you some of the new business models. This is the traditional business model. Uber looked at this and said, well, look, we can change this. We don't want to own cars, license cars, service cars. The market enforces our brand. Drivers find us. So we're just going to find clients, set prices, dispatch, bill and collect, add some software, and become the biggest limo company in the world. Airbnb, same thing. Oh, hotels find us. We're not going to provide security, hire staff, manage the property, not going to set prices. We're just going to do these 4 things, add some great software, and become the biggest hotel company on earth. These companies are about less capital and more speed. Big change. So what are we going to do? We're going to hide from change? Are we going to try to hold it back? Probably not a good idea. What's the new model? We all have to be looking for the new business model that supplants the old one. We have to think about how to turn disruption off. Now, I'm writing a book about this, and I only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to just give you 3 ideas. First of all, risk. In this new world, we simply have to accept risk. So I started my career as a receptionist in a travel agency 45 years ago. 6 months in, my manager said, let's go do a startup. And you might think that was a big risk, but that was a small risk. I was 21, I lived in an apartment, I was only making a little bit of money anyway, I was single, not a big risk. Later, I went to work for an American Airlines, spent 18 years climbing the ladder to CIO. I had a big house, a big mortgage, a big family, a big salary, and I decided to take a huge risk. I said, you know that little department we have, that online company? I want to take that over. It's 10 people. Turn it into Travelocity, took it public for $1.2 billion. Big risk, big reward. Then I took another risk. I had dinner with the former head of Orbitz and the former head of Expedia, and we did the traditional dinner in a napkin, and we thought up kayak.com. 8 years later, we sold it for $1.8 billion. Small risk, big reward. Now I'm all in again with my time and my treasure. I've got a new startup. And people say, Terry, do you need to do another startup? I say, no, man, I'm on Medicare. I don't have to do a startup. I'm old. I want to do another startup. Take the first risk, but mitigate it. We all can do ABCD testing. 20% of what you see at Kayak every day is a test, right? Just build prototypes. Take small risks. Get big rewards. If you don't take risk, you're not moving forward. And learn to make better decisions. Everybody's envious of Silicon Valley. They make decisions so very quickly. But in corporations, decisions are made in the pinball machine. You launch your idea, and IT has some questions, and marketing has some more. You're getting a little tired. Then, service might have some things, and manufacturing, you say, I don't know, I'm going to keep going here. And if you do that, they bring out the big guns because it's time for finance and legal. Game over, right? That's the way it is. You have to move from being Dr. No and closing the door to being yes and getting that idea over the finish line. You can make better ideas than those two guys in Silicon Valley. Collectively, you are smarter. But you have to say yes and not no. You have to say, how do we do this? Instead of how do we stop this? And finally, are you chained to an old model? Somebody has a new idea. Do you say, well, you know, Bob, we've always done it this way, and we've never done it that way. What happens when you say that? The air goes out of the room. You'll never get an idea from Bob again. So face your fears. Established organizations view disruption as a threat. Instead of saying, how can we do that? We have the brand, we have the supply chain, we have manufacturing, we have the people, we have the ideas. How can we do that? Why do you let two guys and a dog in Silicon Valley scare you? Because, look, disruption, innovation, they're just two sides of the same coin. The reason you call it disruption is because you didn't do it. It was done to you, right? Their innovation is your disruption, but you can act. So stop being disruptive and innovate. Innovate. That's all it takes to turn disruption off and turn innovation on. As long as you remember, the future is a foreign country, and they do things differently there. Have a great 2017. Thank you very much. Thank you.